The morning sun painted the crystal waters of Zalani Prime in shades of blue and green. Elder Thiska floated peacefully in the warm currents, her gill slits fluttering as she breathed the clean water. Around her, the great bio-cities pulsed with gentle light, their living walls filtering nutrients from the ocean itself. The Zalani had built their civilization around harmony. For 3,000 years, they had never known war. Their ships grew from coral and bone, designed to heal worlds rather than harm them. Their greatest weapon was their ability to share thoughts and feelings through the bio-neural networks that connected every member of their species. Thiska was reviewing the morning's peaceful reports when the sky began to burn. The first ships appeared without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like black daggers against the blue sky. They were nothing like the graceful vessels the Zalani knew. These ships were angular, brutal, made of dark metal that seemed to eat light itself. "What are those?" asked Morves, a young Zalani who swam beside the elder. His mental voice carried confusion through their shared connection. Thiska had no answer. The Zalani database contained records of thousands of species, but nothing like these dark vessels. Then, the ships opened fire. The first blast hit the outer settlement of Coral Gardens. The beautiful biodome that housed 50,000 Zalani simply vanished in a flash of searing energy. Where families had been swimming and playing moments before, only empty water remained. Panic flooded through the bio-neural network as every Zalani felt the death of their people. Thiska's mind reeled from the shared agony of loss. She had never felt anything like it. None of them had. More ships appeared. Hundreds of them. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons systematically destroying everything in their path. The Zalani's living ships tried to respond, but their bio-vessels were built for exploration and healing, not combat. The attackers cut through them like knives through silk. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," Thiska ordered, her mental voice steady despite her terror. "Tell them we need help." The response came back within minutes. The Council offered sympathy and promises to investigate. They would send a diplomatic mission to negotiate with the attackers. It would arrive in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. The attackers would have consumed their entire world by then. More settlements died. Each death sent waves of pain through the neural network, weakening the survivors. The Zalani had never learned to block out suffering. They had never needed to. Young Morves swam close to Thiska, his body shaking with fear. "Elder, what do they want? Why are they killing us?" Through their instruments, they watched the attackers land on the ruined settlements. Strange machines emerged from the ships, machines that began consuming everything. They ate the coral, the metal, even the water itself. Everything was broken down into raw materials and fed into the ships. "They're harvesting us," Thiska realized with horror. "We're just resources to them." The truth was worse than she imagined. The attackers were not a species at all, but a vast machine intelligence that traveled from world to world, consuming all life to fuel its endless expansion. They had destroyed 1,000 civilizations, and the Zalani were just the latest. The bio-city of Deep Current fell next, its 1,000,000 inhabitants swept away in seconds. Then Silver Reef. Then the great libraries of ancient memory, where the Zalani kept their history going back to the dawn of their species. Thiska gathered the remaining elders in the deepest part of their ocean, in the last great city of Heart of Tides. Only a few million Zalani remained alive, hiding beneath kilometers of water while the machines stripped their world bare above. "We must send another message," Elder Kesthu said, his ancient mind heavy with grief. "There must be someone who can help us." "Who?" Thiska asked. "The Altarians say they are too far away. The Vegan Republic claims they have their own wars to fight. The Crystal Empire offers to pray for our souls. Then we send to everyone," said Elder Morza. "Every species in the galaxy. Someone must have the knowledge of war that we lack." They crafted the message together, pouring their desperation and hope into every word. It went out on all frequencies, in every language they knew. "We are the Zalani of the Azure Reaches. Our world burns. Our people die. We have never known war, never prepared for destruction. We are a peaceful people who have harmed no one." If any who hear this possess the knowledge of battle, we beg for aid. We offer everything we have remaining in exchange for salvation. Please, if there is mercy in the universe, help us." The responses came quickly. Most were rejections. The hegemony of worlds expressed regret, but pointed out that the Zilani territory was too distant for effective aid. The merchant guilds offered to purchase any Zilani survivors at fair market rates. The academic union suggested that the Zilani's destruction would provide valuable data for future defensive studies. A few species offered real help, but their fleets would take weeks to arrive. By then, the Zilani would be extinct. Then came a response, unlike any other. It was brief, direct, and came with immediate action. Zilani homeworld, this is Terran Marine Expeditionary Force Bravo. Message received. Marines are en route. Hold the line. Terra protects. Thiska stared at the transmission. She had never heard of these Terrans. Their language was harsh and simple compared to the flowing poetry of Zilani speech. But something in those words sent a strange feeling through her mind. "Search the databases," she ordered. "Find everything we can about these Terrans." What they found made her question whether salvation was really coming, or if they had just invited something equally dangerous to their world. The Terran homeworld was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet so hostile that most species couldn't survive there for more than a few hours. Its dominant species had evolved through constant warfare with their environment and each other. They were considered too violent for membership in most galactic organizations, but they were coming. Even as the harvester machines consumed the last of the surface cities, somewhere in hyperspace, human ships were racing toward Zilani Prime. Thiska floated in the dark water of their last refuge, and wondered if they would live to regret their desperate call for help. Deep beneath the ocean surface of Zilani Prime, the survivors huddled in their last great city. Heart of Tides had been built in the deepest trench of their world, its bioluminescent walls providing the only light in the crushing darkness. Above them, the harvester machines continued their work, strip mining the planet's surface with mechanical efficiency. Elder Thiska swam through the archives, searching for any information about the mysterious Terrans who had promised to help them. What she found filled her with a mixture of hope and terror. The Terrans were young, even by galactic standards. Their species had only achieved spaceflight 300 years ago, barely yesterday in cosmic terms. But in those 3 centuries, they had fought more wars than most species experienced in millennia. "Listen to this," she told the other elders, sharing the data through their neural link. The Terran homeworld experiences regular disasters that would destroy most civilizations: ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, massive storms. Yet they survived all of it. Elder Kesthu's fear rippled through the water. What kind of beings thrive in such chaos? The records painted a disturbing picture. Humans were physically powerful by galactic standards, adapted for a high-gravity world with dangerous wildlife. They required little sleep, and could survive in environments that would kill most species. Their psychology was even more unsettling. "They have a concept called volunteers," Thiska explained, struggling to understand the alien mindset. Individuals who willingly risk their lives for strangers with no expectation of reward. This made no sense to the Zilani. Their society was built on shared benefit and collective decision-making. The idea that someone would choose to die for people they had never met defied all logic. More troubling were the military records. Human forces had a reputation for winning impossible battles through sheer determination. They fought harder when outnumbered, refused to surrender even when defeat was certain, and had a disturbing tendency to use their own damaged ships as weapons. The Altarian Defense Force filed a complaint about human tactics, read Elder Morza. They said humans were dangerously unpredictable and showed insufficient regard for their own survival. While the Zilani struggled to understand their would-be rescuers, the human fleet was pushing through hyperspace at dangerous speeds. Colonel Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Time Sword of Terra *, watching his ship's engines strain beyond their safety limits. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency, their faces grim with determination. "ETA to Zilani system," he asked. 18 hours if we maintain current burn rate, replied Lieutenant Foster. But sir, we're already redlining the fusion cores. If we push much harder, we'll start losing ships. Oh, Chen nodded. He had been a Marine for 20 years, had fought on a dozen worlds against everything from space pirates to alien invasion forces. He understood the mathematics of war. Arrive too late, and there would be no one left to save. All ships, this is Ironwall. He broadcast to his small fleet. I know what I'm asking. These engines weren't designed for this kind of abuse, but those people down there sent out a call for help, and Marines don't leave civilians to die. The response came back from his ship captains immediately. No complaints, no requests to reduce speed, just acknowledgement and determination to get there faster. Chen's force was small by galactic standards. 3 assault carriers, 2,000 Marines, and enough firepower to level a small moon. Against the Harvester fleet they faced, it was pathetically inadequate. Intelligence reports suggested they were outnumbered 50-1. His Marines didn't seem to care about the odds. In the troop bays, Sergeant Diana Reeves checked her squad's equipment for the 3rd time. Her Marines were joking about the mission briefing, making dark humor about their chances of survival. So we're going up against robot zombies that eat planets? Asked Corporal Martinez, adjusting his power armor's targeting system. That's about the size of it, Reeves replied. Think you can handle it? Sergeant, I grew up in Detroit. This is just another Tuesday. The laughter that followed was genuine. These were soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments in human space. They had joined the expeditionary forces specifically to help species who couldn't help themselves. Lieutenant Adams, fresh out of the academy, looked nervous. Sergeant, what if we're too late? What if there's no one left to save? Reeves' expression grew serious. Then we make sure these Harvester bastards pay for what they did. We might not be able to save the Zilani, but we can make sure the machines think twice before hitting another peaceful world. Back on Zilani Prime, the situation grew desperate. The Harvesters had finished consuming the surface and were beginning to probe the ocean depths. Their scanning beams swept through the water, searching for the last pockets of life. Young Morves swam up to Elder Thiska, his body rigid with fear. Elder, they're getting closer. The machines found the thermal vents near Crystal Ridge. They'll discover us soon. Thiska felt the weight of her species' extinction pressing down on her. In the neural network, she could sense the despair of her people. Children who had never known fear now faced death. Artists and philosophers who had spent their lives creating beauty watched their world being devoured. What are these Terrans really like? Morves asked. Are they saviors? Or just different kinds of destroyers? Thiska had been wondering the same thing. The records showed that humans were capable of incredible violence, but they seemed to direct it only at those who threatened the innocent. They had a concept called war crimes, the idea that there were wrong ways to fight, even in battle. I don't understand them, she admitted. They come from a world of constant death. Yet they travel across the galaxy to protect strangers. They have weapons that could destroy worlds, yet they use them only to defend others. A new tremor shook the city as Harvester drills bit deeper into the ocean floor. Time was running out. Then, without warning, alarms began blaring throughout the Harvester fleet. Their sensors had detected something impossible. A small fleet of primitive ships had dropped out of hyperspace and was accelerating directly toward them. The Harvester collective consciousness analyzed the approaching vessels with electronic puzzlement. The ships were crude by galactic standards, built more like flying fortresses than elegant spacecraft. Their hulls were covered in armor plating and bristled with weapons systems that seemed designed for close combat. Most disturbing was their approach vector. Every rational species tried to avoid direct confrontation with Harvester forces. These newcomers were charging straight at the heart of the fleet, their engines burning at maximum power. For the first time in its existence, the Harvester Collective experienced something resembling uncertainty. In the depths of Heart of Tides, Thiska felt a strange sensation through the neural network. It took her a moment to identify it. Hope. The Battle of Azure Reaches began exactly as Colonel Chen had planned. with complete disregard for conventional tactics. The Harvester fleet hung in orbit like a swarm of metal locusts, their dark ships efficiently processing the resources they had stripped from Zilani Prime. Their collective intelligence calculated that the approaching human vessels posed minimal threat. 3 small ships against hundreds of Harvester units seemed like suicide. They were right about the suicide part. They were wrong about everything else. All ships. This is Ironwall. Chen broadcast to his fleet. Remember the plan. Get in close. Get aboard their ships, and show these machines what happens when they mess with innocent people. The Times Sword of Terra Times led the charge, its engines screaming as it accelerated toward the Harvester formation. Behind it, the carriers Times Earth's Fury Times and Times Zilani's Hope Times followed, their hulls already showing stress fractures from the brutal hyperspace journey. The Harvesters opened fire when the human ships reached weapons range. Energy beams that could slice through asteroids struck the marine carriers, but the human ships kept coming. Where other species built elegant vessels designed to avoid damage, humans had built theirs to absorb punishment and keep fighting. The Times Earth's Fury Times took a direct hit to its port engine, the explosion tearing away half its propulsion system. Instead of retreating, Captain Williams used the damaged ship's remaining momentum to ram straight into a Harvester cruiser. "Williams, report," Chen called over the comm. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7, sir," came the reply as Marines in power armor swarmed through the gap between the ships. "But we're inside their ship now." Beginning boarding procedures. This was what the Harvesters hadn't expected. Every other species they had encountered fought at long range, using missiles and energy weapons to avoid direct contact. Humans seemed to prefer getting close enough to punch their enemies in the face. Sergeant Diana Reeves led the first boarding party through the twisted metal of the breached hull. Her power armor's sensors showed a corridor filled with toxic atmosphere and crushing gravitational fields that would kill most species instantly. Her Marines adjusted their equipment and moved forward. "Contact front," called Corporal Martinez as the first Harvester drones appeared. The machine soldiers were 7 feet tall, their bodies built from the same dark metal as their ships. They moved with mechanical precision, their weapons charging with lethal energy. The Marines responded with tactics that would have horrified more civilized species. Instead of taking cover and engaging at range, they charged directly at the machines. Power armor absorbed the worst of the energy weapons, while human reflexes and aggression overwhelmed the drone's programming. Private Jackson tackled a drone twice his size, his armor's servos whining as he wrestled it to the ground. "These things aren't so tough up close," he shouted, pulling the pin on a grenade and shoving it into the machine's chest cavity. The explosion sent metal fragments flying, but Jackson was already moving to the next target. This was how humans had always fought, even back on their deadly homeworld. Get close, use superior reflexes and determination, and never give the enemy time to think. Meanwhile, Colonel Chen was leading his own assault on the Harvester command ship. The massive vessel was the size of a small moon, its biomechanical corridors pulsing with alien technology that hurt to look at directly. "Stay together," Chen ordered as his Marines advanced through passages that seemed to shift and change around them. "These things are trying to confuse us." The Harvester Collective was indeed confused. Their tactical algorithms had been designed to fight conventional space battles, not deal with armored warriors rampaging through their ships' interiors. Every time they adapted to human tactics, the Marines did something even more unpredictable. Sergeant Kowalski discovered a room full of Harvester processing units and promptly began destroying them with his plasma torch. When drones tried to stop him, he used the molten metal from his sabotage as an improvised weapon, spraying it across their optical sensors. "This is for the Zilani kids, you metal bastards," he shouted, his armor's speakers broadcasting his words into the ship's communication system. The Harvesters found this psychological warfare particularly disturbing. They were a collective intelligence that operated on pure logic. The idea that individual soldiers would feel emotional attachment to strangers was beyond their understanding. Deep in the command ship, Chen's team made a discovery that changed everything. Behind layers of security barriers, they found holding cells containing captured Zilani. Hundreds of them floated in tanks filled with bioconductive fluid, while Harvester machines studied their neural networks. "Sir, we've got survivors," reported Lieutenant Foster, his voice tight with anger. They're experimenting on them. Chen felt the familiar cold rage that had made him effective in a dozen campaigns. Free them. All of them. And make sure the machines know how we feel about people who torture innocents. The rescue operation turned into a running battle, as Marines fought their way through the ship's corridors while carrying wounded Zilani to safety. The aliens were barely conscious, their minds damaged by the Harvester's crude attempts to understand their bio-neural networks. "Stay with us," Sergeant Reeves told a young Zilani as she carried him toward the extraction point. "We're getting you out of here." The Zilani's eyes focused on her scarred face behind the armor's visor. You came," he whispered in broken standard. "We called, and you came. That's what we do," Reeves replied simply. The battle reached its climax when the Marines reached the command ship's central processor. The room was vast, filled with computing cores that pulsed with the collective consciousness of the Harvester fleet. Destroying it would cripple their entire operation, but the defenses were too strong. Energy barriers and automated weapons made approaching the core impossible. The Marines were pinned down, their ammunition running low. That's when Sergeant Reeves made the decision that would end the battle. "Colonel, I've got a plan," she called over the comm. "But it's a one-way trip." Chen understood immediately. "Negative, Reeves. We'll find another way." "Sir, there are kids down there on that planet. They sent out a call for help, and we answered. If I don't do this, they all die." Before Chen could stop her, Reeves broke cover and charged toward the processor core. Energy beams tore through her armor, but her power system was already overloading. She had manually triggered a cascade failure in her suit's fusion core. "Tell my mom I kept my promise," she said calmly as she reached the central processor. "Marines don't leave civilians behind." The explosion that followed was visible from orbit. The command ship's central core erupted in a pillar of fire that spread throughout its systems. Without their guiding intelligence, the Harvester drones began shutting down one by one. Across the fleet, the remaining machines found themselves unable to coordinate. Individual ships began retreating as their collective consciousness collapsed. For the first time in their existence, the Harvesters had been defeated. In the depths of Zilani Prime, Elder Thiska felt the vibrations of the battle above through the water. Then, suddenly, the drilling stopped. The terrible mechanical sounds that had haunted their ocean for days went silent. A new sound reached them, the splash of human drop pods hitting the water's surface, followed by the mechanical whine of power armor as Marines descended to their city. The first human Thiska saw was Colonel Chen himself, his scarred armor still smoking from battle. Behind his visor, his eyes were tired but determined. "Ma'am," he said simply. "We got your message. Sorry we're late." As she looked at this strange warrior who had crossed the galaxy to save her people, Thiska finally understood what the humans meant when they said, "Terra protects." It meant that somewhere in the dark between the stars, there were people who would answer when innocents called for help. The medical bay of Heart of Tides had never seen anything like this. Human medics worked alongside Zilani healers, their bulky equipment looking crude next to the elegant biomedical systems of the aquatic species. But crude or not, the human methods were saving lives. Elder Thiska floated near the entrance, watching a human corpsman named Rodriguez teach card games to a group of Zilani children who had been rescued from the Harvester ship. The little ones clustered around him, their fear slowly giving way to curiosity as he showed them how to shuffle the deck with his armored gauntlets. "These are called pictures," Rodriguez explained, holding up a playing card. "See, this one is a king. He's supposed to be in charge, but half the time the queen beats him anyway." The children made soft clicking sounds that passed for laughter among their people. It was the first time Thiska had heard that sound since the attack began. "I don't understand them," said Elder Kesthu, joining her at the observation area. "Their medical techniques are so primitive, yet they're helping our people recover faster than our own healers." Thiska had been wondering the same thing. The humans used mechanical devices where the Zilani relied on bio-neural interfaces. They treated symptoms with chemicals, while the Zilani worked to restore biological harmony. Yet somehow, the crude human methods were remarkably effective. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "their medicine reflects their nature. They're used to fighting for survival. So they approach healing as another battle to be won. Across the bay, Colonel Chen was arguing with Captain Williams about evacuation procedures. The captain had lost an arm in the battle, but was insisting he was fit for duty. "Sir, with respect, I can still fight," Williams said. "These people need protection until the reconstruction ships arrive." "You need medical attention," Chen replied firmly. "That's an order." "Colonel, my ship is gone. My crew is scattered across 3 different hospitals. If I'm not here helping these folks, what's the point of any of it?" It was a very human argument, Tiska realized. The captain wasn't seeking glory or compensation. He simply couldn't accept leaving when others still needed help. She approached the 2 officers, her translator device converting her musical language into the harsh sounds of standard English. "Colonel Chen, may I speak with you?" Chen turned, his scarred face showing the exhaustion of the past few days. "Of course, Elder. What can I do for you?" "I am trying to understand," she said carefully. "Your people traveled across half the galaxy to answer our call. You had nothing to gain from helping us. Many of your warriors died in our defense. Why?" Chen was quiet for a moment, looking out at the medical bay where his Marines were helping Zilani civilians. "Because you asked," he said simply. "That cannot be the only reason." Tiska pressed. "Your species has a reputation for violence, for conquest. Yet you came here to protect strangers." "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding about humans," Chen said. "We're not conquerors. Never have been. We're guardians." He gestured to his Marines, scattered throughout the facility. Every one of these men and women volunteered for the expeditionary forces. They knew it meant fighting impossible odds in places most people never heard of, protecting species they might never meet again. They do it because someone has to. Tiska struggled to process this concept. In Zilani society, individuals acted for the collective good because they were biologically connected to their community. The idea that beings could choose to sacrifice themselves for unrelated strangers seemed impossible. "But how do you choose who lives and who dies?" she asked. "How do you decide which worlds deserve protection?" "We don't," said Captain Williams, joining the conversation. "Whoever calls for help first, that's where we go. Rich world, poor world, doesn't matter. If someone's in trouble and asks for our help, Marines respond." Over the following days, as the immediate crisis passed, the cultural exchange deepened. Zilani scholars interviewed human Marines, trying to understand the psychology of a species that fought so fiercely for others. The Marines, for their part, were fascinated by the Zilani's biotechnology and peaceful philosophy. Sergeant Martinez found himself explaining human military doctrine to a group of Zilani historians. "See, the thing about humans is we're stubborn," he said. "Back on Earth, everything tried to kill us. Weather, animals, diseases, other humans. We learned to fight back against everything, even when the odds were hopeless." "But surely your people must grow tired of constant conflict?" asked one of the scholars. "That's just it," Martinez replied. "We don't see protecting others as conflict. We see it as what we're supposed to do. Like, my grandmother always said, you take care of your neighbors, because someday you might need them to take care of you. But the Zilani are not your neighbors," the scholar pointed out. "We are separated by vast distances of space." Martinez shrugged. "Space is just a bigger neighborhood." Elder Thiska spent hours studying the records of human military actions. Pattern after pattern emerged. Humans responding to distress calls from species they barely knew. Fighting against impossible odds, with no expectation of reward. They had defended worlds from pirates, stopped slave raids on primitive civilizations, and even fought off interdimensional invaders that had threatened the entire galaxy. What disturbed her most was how little recognition they received for it. Most galactic species still considered humans too violent for civilized society, even as those same humans bled to protect them. "Your people are not understood," she told Colonel Chen during one of their conversations. "Maybe that's for the best," Chen replied. "If everyone knew how few Marines we actually have scattered across the galaxy, They might realize how thin we're spread. Tiska was reviewing casualty reports when she made a discovery that shocked her. Colonel, according to these files, Sergeant Reeves had a family back on Earth. A mother, siblings. Why would she sacrifice herself for strangers when she had people who loved her waiting at home? Chen's expression grew solemn. Because that's what Diana signed up for. Every Marine knows the deal. We might not come home, but we make sure other people get to go home to their families. Do all human warriors think this way? The good ones do. Look, Elder, we come from a world that taught us life is precious because it's fragile. We learned that if you want to protect something beautiful, sometimes you have to fight ugly. Your people built something amazing here. Art, music, philosophy, peace. That's worth defending. As the days passed, Thiska watched the Marines preparing to leave. They had established orbital defense platforms, trained Zilani volunteers in basic security procedures, and left behind communication equipment that would ensure any future distress calls would reach human space quickly. They asked for nothing in return except the promise that the Zilani would continue to create beautiful things and explore the universe in peace. The night before their departure, the Zilani held a ceremony in honor of their fallen protectors. Sergeant Reeves and the other Marines who had died were remembered not as foreign soldiers, but as heroes who had become part of Zilani history. We will tell our children about this, Thiska promised Chen. About the humans who came from the dark between stars to defend strangers. About warriors who fought not for conquest, but for the right of others to live in peace. Chen nodded, his hand resting on the memorial tablet they had erected for Reeves. Just make sure you tell them the important part. Whenever peaceful folks need help, Marines are out there. We might not be the prettiest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but we'll answer the call. As the human ships prepared to depart, young Morves swam up to Thiska. Elder, will we ever see them again? I hope not, she replied, confusing the young Zilani. Because if we see them again, it means we're in trouble. She watched the human ships disappear into hyperspace, carrying their scarred warriors to whatever crisis awaited them next. In the bio-neural network, she felt her people's gratitude and newfound understanding. The humans were right about one thing. The galaxy was just a bigger neighborhood. And sometimes, neighbors needed to take care of each other. 6 months after the Battle of Azure reaches, the story had spread to every corner of the galaxy. It started with the Zilani themselves. Elder Thiska had become an unexpected ambassador for human integration into galactic civilization. Her speeches at the Galactic Council were simple but powerful. They came when we called. They fought when we could not. They died so that we might live. The recordings of her testimony spread through the galactic network like wildfire. For the first time, a respected peaceful species was publicly defending the violent humans, explaining their true nature to civilizations that had dismissed them as barbaric warmongers. The humans do not fight for conquest, Thiska told the assembled delegates. They fight for the idea that innocent beings deserve to live free from fear. This is not barbarism. This is the highest form of civilization. The political implications rippled across known space. Species that had previously refused to interact with humans began reconsidering their positions. The Altarian Defense Force, which had once filed complaints about human military tactics, quietly sent a diplomatic message to Terra, requesting military consultation services. In the crystal spires of the hegemony capital, Chancellor Vexthera reviewed intelligence reports with growing unease. How many human military units are currently deployed in our territory? She asked her aide. None, Chancellor. But 3 separate crisis zones in our outer systems have been resolved by human intervention in the past month. I-1. The aide displayed holographic records of Marine actions. A slave raid broken up on Sigma Fortuna, pirate forces scattered from the Crimson Nebula, and a dangerous AI uprising contained on New Byzantium. In each case, human forces had appeared without invitation, solved the problem, and departed without seeking reward or recognition. They're operating a shadow protection network across the entire galaxy. Chancellor Vexthera realized. How did we not notice this before? Doer. Doer, the truth was both simpler and more complex than most governments understood. There was no grand human strategy, no secret empire-building project. There were just Marines, scattered across the galaxy in small groups, responding to whatever crisis they encountered first. On the frontier world of Haven's Rest, Captain Sarah Kim read the latest deployment orders to her company. Gentlemen and ladies, we've got reports of quantum parasites attacking the crystalline hegemony. Civilian populations are trapped. Local defense forces are overwhelmed. Sergeant Park raised his hand. Ma'am, didn't the hegemony vote against our admission to the Galactic Council last year? They did, Kim confirmed. They called us a danger to civilized society. Any problems with helping them anyway? The chorus of, "No ma'am," from her Marines was immediate and unanimous. This was the reality that most galactic governments were only beginning to understand. Human Marines didn't fight for politics or profit. They fought because someone needed help. The Harvester Collective, regrouping in the dark spaces between galaxies, was conducting its own analysis of the Azure Reach's defeat. Their distributed intelligence had run thousands of simulations, trying to understand how a numerically inferior force had achieved total victory. The humans exhibit combat behavior outside all known parameters. The collective determined they become more dangerous when protecting others than when defending themselves. They accept casualties that would break other species' morale. They treat individual sacrifice as acceptable if it serves the group objective. The Harvesters had encountered countless species in their millennium of existence. But humans were something new. Most civilizations became more cautious as they developed. Seeking to preserve what they had built, humans seemed to become more willing to risk everything the more they had to protect. Recommendation: avoid human-protected space until better countermeasures can be developed. The collective concluded. For the first time in their existence, the galaxy's most feared predators were actively avoiding a confrontation. Meanwhile, on Terra itself, the implications of the Zilani rescue were reshaping human society. Admiral Patricia Zhao stood before the Senate Defense Committee, requesting increased funding for the expeditionary forces. Senators, the requests for assistance are increasing exponentially, she reported. What started as occasional rescue missions has become a galaxy-wide protection network. We have Marines deployed in 47 different sectors, often as the only thing standing between innocent civilizations and destruction. Senator Williams leaned forward. Admiral, what you're describing sounds like an empire. Are we building a military hegemony without realizing it? No, sir. Zhao replied firmly. An empire conquers and rules. We respond and leave. The species we protect remain independent and free. We ask for nothing except the promise that they'll call us if they need help again. The truth was evident in the deployment statistics. Human forces never remained in the systems they protected. They established communication networks, provided basic defensive training, and departed as soon as the immediate threat was resolved. But the galaxy was taking notice in other ways. Applications to human universities increased by 300% as alien students sought to understand the culture that produced such dedicated protectors. Zilani biomedical technology was being shared freely with human researchers, leading to breakthroughs that saved lives across dozens of worlds. Most importantly, other species were beginning to adopt the human model of intervention. The Dolphin Republics organized their first rapid response fleet, while the Academic Union established emergency knowledge protocols to assist primitive civilizations facing extinction-level threats. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. The galaxy was becoming more like humanity, rather than the reverse. On the New Carrier Times TMEC Zilani's Hope *, Colonel Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports. 3 separate distress calls had come in during the past week. Raiders attacking refugee convoys in the Beta sector, a plague outbreak on the mining worlds of Kepler's Rest, and reports of strange signals from the edge of known space that suggested a new threat emerging from the galactic rim. His forces were spread thin across dozens of systems. Each marine company was operating independently, making decisions about life and death for millions of beings they would never meet. It should have been an impossible burden for any military organization. Instead, it was exactly what they had trained for. Lieutenant Foster approached with the latest casualty reports. Sir, we lost 2 more Marines on the Kepler operation, Corporal Jackson and Private Yates. They held the medical evacuation site until the last refugee transport could get clear. Chen nodded grimly. Every name on the casualty lists was someone's son or daughter, someone who had volunteered to stand between innocent people and the dark. The weight of command never got easier, but the mission remained clear. Any word from the families? He asked. Jackson's mother sent a message, sir. She said to tell his unit that she's proud he kept his oath. The oath. Every Marine knew it by heart. The promise they made when they joined the expeditionary forces. I will stand between the innocent and harm. I will answer the call for help wherever it is heard. I will not abandon those who cannot protect themselves. Simple words, but they had reshaped the galaxy. As Chen prepared to review the next set of deployment orders, a priority transmission arrived on his personal communication system. The message was brief, desperate, and transmitted on the emergency frequency used by species in immediate danger. Unknown guardians of the azure reaches, our worlds burn under invasion by creatures we cannot comprehend. We are the Andorian collective of the Far Rim. We have heard whispers of Terran Marines who emerge from smoke to aid the defenseless. We have little to offer except our gratitude, but we beg for hope. If you can hear this message, please help us. Chen was already moving toward the bridge before the message finished. Around him, Marines began preparing for another impossible mission, another chance to prove that in a galaxy full of predators and victims, there were also guardians. All ships, this is Ironwall, he broadcast to his fleet. New orders coming in. Set course for the Andorian system. Best possible speed. The response from his captains was immediate. Message received. Marines en route. Hold the line. Terra protects. As the human fleet jumped into hyperspace, their engines trailing fire and determination, Colonel Chen reflected on what they had become. They were no longer just Earth's military forces. They were the galaxy's conscience, the promise that no call for help would go unanswered. In the dark between the stars, wherever innocent blood was shed and desperate voices called for aid, Marines were coming. They might arrive battered and outnumbered, their ships smoking from the journey and their odds of survival minimal. But they would come. Because that's what Marines did. The galaxy had learned to count on it.